Hello and welcome to Al Jazeera. I'm Imran Khan. The time is now 19:59 GMT, and in the next few seconds, the US naval blockade over the Strait of Hormuz will begin. Washington says this blockade of Iran's coastline will include all traffic coming to and from its ports. It says humanitarian shipments will be allowed to pass, but they'll be subject to inspection. Iran says it'll exercise its sovereignty over the waterway, whatever the cost. Earlier, US President Donald Trump had announced a 20% fee on all cargo transiting the strait, something which he's now backtracked on. He now says the US has agreed to various trade and investment deals with Gulf states as compensation for guarding the waterway. We have correspondents on either side of the Gulf covering this story for us. We'll be in Tehran with Tohid Asadi shortly, as well as with Mohammed Val, who's standing by for us in Doha. But first, to Washington and Al Jazeera's Patty Culhane. Patty, let's begin with Donald Trump's 180 on these tolls. What was the background to that?
Well, he said when speaking to reporters while talking to the Iraqi prime minister, he said that he got calls from, in his words, kings and emirs, and that they've promised to do massive investments in the United States, so there was be no need for that 20% toll that he had talked about less than 24 hours ago. So exactly what are these investments? Well, quite frankly, he didn't give any details. The president often makes these large announcements of huge investments with very few details, and he has put out very large numbers that independent firms have tracked and said those numbers tend to be exaggerated. Still, he is saying that the investment will be made and that will pay for the missions in Iran.
There have been very, very strong words in the press briefing at the Oval Office. Donald Trump called the Iranians very difficult people. On Truth Social, he talked about their lying, violent, malicious leadership, and that's a quote. And he's not really trying to set negotiations in any kind of friendly way going forward. So what's his plan?
Well, this is the president's pattern, right? When he gets upset, he calls the people who he's angry with names. He's been doing that consistently on and off when it comes to Iranian leaders throughout the entire conflict. At one point saying that the new leadership was easier to work with, and then now, of course, calling them those names. It's also important to point out in that post on social media, he said oil is flowing like never before, and the Strait of Hormuz is open to all traffic except for Iranian ships, when in fact independent tracking companies can see what ships are going through the Strait of Hormuz. One report said there were just 10 on Monday. So for the president to say the strait is open is in fact not true. But this is what he does. He calls his opponents names. He tries to badger them into sitting down and negotiate. He believes it sends the message that he is strong and they are weak. So you can expect this to continue on social media and in front of the cameras for the days to come until we hear the other side of it.
I mean, talk about the other side of it. I mean, are there any dissenting voices warning the White House, American dissenting voices, about reimposing the blockade?
Surprisingly, no, because we did see the Republican-controlled House and the Republican-controlled Senate not long ago pass a resolution that told the president he had to stop military activity in Iran or get congressional approval. So that was pretty unheard of to see the Republicans bucking the president. They don't really tend to do that under this administration. It doesn't have the full force of Congress because of the way it was done, but they were very critical and expressed relief when there was that brief ceasefire. So far, now they just got back into session. They were out of town for the July 4th holiday, but so far they've been staying pretty quiet. Obviously, the big concern for them is going to be gas prices. When gas prices go up, they hear from their constituents. The entire House of Representatives and about a third of the Senate is up for re-election in November. It's going to come closer. It's closer than you think when it comes to American politics. And so the price of gas could have a direct impact on their chances for election. So we might hear more if that happens.
That's Patty Culhane live for us from Washington, D.C. Tehran has warned that not another drop of oil and gas will be exported from the region as a result of the US naval blockade. That's as Iran's president hit back at Trump's latest comments and questioned America's military objectives.
لفظیاشون ادامه داره.
Their rhetoric continues, but the question is, have they reached their goals on the battlefield? The people who decided to try and tear our country apart, what have their actions ultimately achieved now? We will defend every inch of our homeland with our actions. The disrespecting things they say are befitting of them, not us.
Now, Tohid Asadi is live with us now from Tehran. We've got competing narratives, competing agendas here. The US says it is going to control the Strip. Iran says it controls the Strip. How does Iran effectively control the Strip?
Well, this is not for the first time that we can see such kind of controversy rhetorically speaking, and both sides are trying to project their power when it comes to the Strait of Hormuz. But from the Iranian side, they are saying that any ships and vessels transiting through the trajectory of this geostrategically significant choke point should be coordinated with the Iranian side. Meanwhile, Iranian Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi came out to say that the country which should be compensated for the provision of the safety and security of commercial vessels is the Iranian side, not the American side. And also, he put emphasis that Iran is going to maintain the control over the strait. But practically speaking, we know that Iran is practicing a level of authority by just effectively showing that it does not allow ships and vessels to transit if there is no green light from the Iranian side. And over the past few days and nights, what we witnessed is indicative of that. We know that several oil tankers planning to transit or approaching the Strait of Hormuz were stopped, were even fired upon after what the Iranian side, specifically the Revolutionary Guards, called denying or disregarding the warnings from the Iranian side. So practically speaking, this is one side. Also, there are mines, we know that, on the way, and Iran is saying that the safe pathway to transit is the one that is close to actually Iranian territories. And on that, we've got the deputy foreign minister of the country, Kazem Gharibabadi, tonight speaking to the state TV, saying that the reason behind the recent round of escalation is the determination of the new route close to the Omani side. And that is something that Iran is not obviously happy about. It's responding, and it's obviously creating more confrontation on the horizon.
Tohid, let's talk about the Memorandum of Understanding. It's the only document that was presented that was going to be a precursor to a final deal. Is anyone in Iran, officialdom, considering the Memorandum of Understanding to now be null and void?
Well, it didn't stand the test of time when we look at the statements from the Iranian side, specifically from the day one when it was signed. There was criticism coming from Iranian side saying that the United States is not fulfilling their commitments based on the Memorandum of Understanding. First, the halting of the actually exchange of fire and the Israeli attacks to the Lebanese territories was mentioned. Then later on, it turned out that the U.S. Treasury Department reimposed oil sanctions. And then also when it comes to the naval blockade by the Americans, which the U.S. president says now it is in place. Again, these were all other controversies. Let's keep in mind, the Memorandum of Understanding was supposed to pave the way for a continued diplomatic pathway to resolve the remaining issues. The assumption back in time was that part of these issues have been already solved, but when it came to the test of time, we saw that no, they haven't indeed, specifically when it comes to the Strait of Hormuz and the controversies in that regard. At this point, the rhetoric that we hear from the political establishment in Iran is that they are not that much hopeful about the implementation of that. They don't see it valid anymore. And that comes also from a context in which mistrust engulfs Iran's relations or any rapprochement by Tehran towards the United States.
Now, Tohid, you and I have been talking about this for a very long time now. But is Iran preparing for in any visible way, through public statements or through preparation, for a resumption of the war?
Well, what we haven't heard from the Iranian side was a two-sided message, a twofold message. They are saying that they are ready for confrontation. They are also ready for negotiation. And this is something that we have been hearing from Tehran since the long time, I would say since the initiation of the confrontation. But the truth of the matter is that right now they are saying they are not interested in waging a war, but they are going to retaliate. They are going to strike back. And this is something that we see when it comes to the statements from the joint military headquarters of Khatamul Anbiya, the statements from IRGC over the past few days and nights, and other political statements coming from the officials, the political officials. It is quite crystal clear that Iranians are saying that every time an attack happens, US airstrikes targets certain points in the Iranian southern coast, we hear it from the Iranian side that they are ready for stronger, more crushing retaliatory strikes. And should they continue, Iran is going to further strike back. But in a larger context, also Iranians are warning that in case of an attack, there is going to be beyond the region, and the scale is going to be higher compared to the previous rounds of escalation.